Good morning. I'm Deep Saini at the University of Canberra in my weekly conversation with Michelle Grattan. Good morning, Michelle.
Hi, Deep.
Last week in politics was quite interesting. The Liberal talent for self-sabotage continues with the Christopher Pyne's secret tapes that have come up with him boasting about how the moderates in the party are winning. Would you shine some light on this and tell us how much damage this has done to the Liberal Party?
It's a question of more heat than light, I think, at the moment. Christopher Pyne is exuberant, and that's his personality. It was a late night function of his faction and its supporters during the Liberals' Federal Council meeting in Sydney last Friday night, and he really was just in this gloating mood, saying we're in the winner's circle. And also he said, and this turned out to be fairly explosive, that we might get same-sex marriage delivered earlier than expected. Now, this is a very sensitive issue in the party. It's a totemic issue for the Conservatives in the party, and so they immediately thought there was some plot, and also they thought that this boasting by Christopher Pyne was just reinforcing their point that the party has been taken over by the left, and of course led by that great leftist Malcolm Turnbull. So this was just a recipe for trouble, and that trouble played out damagingly all week.
As if this was not enough, there is always ever-present Tony Abbott, and he has continued his statements on any media that he has had the opportunity to do so on. Now, is that a serious challenge to Malcolm Turnbull's leadership?
It certainly undermines Malcolm Turnbull's leadership because it comes in the context of the government not doing well in the polls, and the Prime Minister under quite a lot of pressure now because there have been 14 bad polls in a row in Newspoll, and of course he set up that polling measure when he challenged Tony Abbott and got the leadership. So I think that the fact that Tony Abbott is determined now to go out and talk on a whole range of subjects, to present an alternative agenda, will not be restrained, and frankly has the motive of trying to end the Turnbull leadership. That amounts to not a literal challenge to Malcolm Turnbull, but a broad challenge.
So you see a palace coup in the making here?
Not necessarily. I think that whether Malcolm Turnbull's leadership lasts until the election is now an open question, but if there was to be a change, it wouldn't necessarily be to Tony Abbott, who many think couldn't win again. But even that, these days, people aren't totally ruling out. But certainly Malcolm Turnbull is in a very, very difficult place, and if these polls continue between now and the end of the year, then there'll be a lot of questioning about whether he's the best person to lead into the election. The thing that in a sense protects him is that the various alternatives don't look any better prospects. Now, of course, the difference when Tony Abbott was under pressure was that there was Malcolm Turnbull. Yeah. There was an alternative people thought would be better. That is not the situation at the moment.
Now then, there is the question of a reshuffle of the cabinet. That is not due until later this year, but some of the aspirants have already started positioning themselves. They would like to see it happen sooner than later. Where do you think that one is going to go?
Some of the young Conservatives have been taking advantage of the general shambles of the week to press for an early reshuffle. But the word in prime ministerial circles is that that's now going to be left until the end of the year. I think that some months ago it was thought maybe it would be mid-year, but at the moment the challenge for the Prime Minister is to try and get as much stability as possible, and a reshuffle always leads to some instability because there'll be losers as well as winners, and really would bring no great advantage at this stage. So those aspirations among the Young Turks will have to be delayed for a while.
Yeah, it could also be seen by public as kind of a band-aid solution to the government's problems.
It's not a solution. It's just not a solution. Malcolm Turnbull, in fact, has had several reshuffles in a short time that he's been Prime Minister, and there's no great gain out of another lot of moves at this stage.
The self-sabotage issue is not exclusive to Liberals. Greens have their own problems. For example, Lee Rhiannon seems like she will be excluded from some of the party room discussions as a result of the pressure that is coming from, or interference that's coming from the New South Wales Greens into the federal wing of the party. How serious is this for the Greens? How serious is the division, and what are the implications?
Well, the division, of course, came out of the recent talk about the schools legislation and when the party was negotiating with the government. At that stage, Lee Rhiannon, who's from the New South Wales branch, authorised a leaflet that was urging people to lobby senators not to support that legislation. And this really infuriated the rest of the parliamentary party. It's something that had been building up, though, for quite a while, because the New South Wales branch of the Greens is really hard left, and they do bind their senators, only they have one at the moment, but they bind their people. And so the other members of the party decided that this was the time to take on the issue, and they wrote a letter of complaint to their national body, the National Council, and held a party meeting the other day which ended up saying that Lee Rhiannon would be excluded when government legislation was being considered that was controversial. So that's the background. The broader question, though, is whether the party generally, and Senator Dean Natali, its leader in particular, are willing to take on the New South Wales branch, because there was an immediate kickback from that branch saying this is unconstitutional, we're fighting it, and really resisting. And so I think that there'll be more trouble before this matter is sorted out. That branch wants to preserve its independence to direct its members, and the National Party is saying, well, we can't work as a consensus group if that situation prevails. So there'll be a lot of toing and froing, I think, in the coming weeks and possibly months.
Well, in the coming weeks, I will not be here to discuss these things with you for the next roughly 4 weeks. I'll be back in August. I'm traveling. But in the meantime, keep enjoying the Australian politics, and we'll catch up when I come back in August.
I'm sure there'll be a lot to catch up on, Deep, and good travelling.
Thank you, Michelle.